What's up, Broncos country? We are back with yet another game preview video as the Denver Broncos are set to take on the New York Jets in Week 4 of the 2024 NFL season. The Broncos are coming off of their first win of the year in dominating fashion over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 26-7. They have been practicing on the East Coast at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. They've dealt with a lot of rain and possibility for rain also in the game this week. So it's going to be good that the Broncos were out there practicing in those elements. And we are seeing a true shift in identity in this Denver Broncos team. We are seeing them become a defensive dominant team. We expected them to really be an offensive team when Sean Payton was hired, but Sean Payton really made a home run hire in Vance Joseph. I know that Broncos country has kind of been rough on Vance Joseph. Some of that I feel like is previously from his tenure as the head coach. The rest of it was in the beginning of his tenure here, Vance Joseph was trying to implement this hybrid of his own scheme and the Vic Fangio scheme, the stuff that the Broncos had been doing for all the years since VJ had first departed. And it was clear that Vance Joseph's mostly single high, cover 3, cover 1, blitz heavy scheme was not going to hybridize well with Vic Fangio's 2 high zone coverage scheme that's meant to keep everything in front of the defense and basically make the offense beat you with 1,000 paper cuts. Vance Joseph comes from the Wade Phillips tree, and now we're seeing VJ start to pivot back to this Wade Phillips style of defense. And last week against the Buccaneers especially, we saw them get to play with a lead, and that's where things got to get opened up. We saw them blitz, we saw them play man coverage a crap ton. We saw them play a lot of single high, not afraid to bring an extra body down to stop the run. That's a danger when you play too high, is you have one less body in the box to stop the run, and it leaves you vulnerable with lighter defensive fronts. Vance Joseph seems to have woken up and doesn't want to play these light fronts anymore, which is really good to see. On the offensive side of the ball, the Broncos are starting to get in a rhythm. Bo Nix easily looked the most comfortable that he's looked throughout his entire NFL career. We've seen him finally get into a groove with comeback routes, slants. We've seen him get in a groove with the read option game, the design quarterback run game. Sean Payton is finally starting to realize what Bo Nix does well, what he does not do well, and I feel like Sean called his most complete game for Bo Nix against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Broncos still have issues with their run game. Tyler Beatty gave them a spark last week, or Tyler Bidet, that's going to take some time to get used to. Tyler Bidet gave them a spark last week, so we're going to see if Bidet can continue to do that as we go through this game. He has now officially been promoted to the active roster. He took the roster spot of Alex Singleton, who is now down for the season with a torn ACL. But without further ado, Broncos country, as we always do, let's go ahead and dive into this New York Jets roster, pinpoint the top threats for this team, and really determine what matchups we need to watch as we go through this game. And of course, it's all going to start off with Aaron Rodgers. He is what makes this entire Jets operation work. Aaron Rodgers was, of course, thought to be the franchise savior for the New York Jets last year. 4 snaps into the season, goes down with a torn Achilles. Heading into this year, a lot of people were wondering, what was Aaron going to look like? It's really been about 2 years since we've seen Aaron Rodgers play at a high level. And as somebody who is a fan of Aaron Rodgers, at least on the field, off the field, well, that's a different matter, but on the field, Aaron Rodgers was one of the quarterbacks that I grew up watching, and I'm very happy to say that he is back to his old self. He is back to extending plays. He looks mobile out there. He's making, obviously, good decisions on the field. That's a far cry from what the New York Jets have had quarterback-wise for the last several years. He's able to solve problems on the field when they develop. Let's say that the offense is in a bad look against what the defense is showing. Aaron Rodgers, with all of his years of experience, he can get you out of a bad play. The Jets have sorely needed somebody who can be a field general out there, and Aaron Rodgers is doing that. But just to see Aaron Rodgers be able to have that play extension ability at the age of 40 coming off of a torn Achilles is really cool to see. The first week and a half of the year, we didn't really see a whole lot of it. I thought in the second half of that Tennessee Titans game, and especially on that Thursday night game against the New England Patriots, Aaron Rodgers looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers out there. So the Broncos are going to be in for a very tough test with Rodgers because he has seen every single defensive look that teams can throw at him. And like I just said, he has an answer for it. The Broncos are really good at disguising their coverages, but let's just face it, Aaron Rodgers is a far cry from the other three quarterbacks that the Denver Broncos have faced. The best quarterback that the Broncos have faced in this three-game span was Baker Mayfield. And yes, they shut him down, but they also shut down the entire operation around Baker Mayfield. Pat Surtain took away his number one receiver in Mike Evans. Riley Moss did a good job of taking away the other receiver in Chris Godwin. And then Jaquan McMillan, he was freaking incredible in the slot as well. So the Broncos are going to have to take away the weapons, and then, just like last week, they're going to have to win that war of attrition up front. They're going to have to win in the trenches. And it's going to be a tougher battle than it would have been last year. The New York Jets do have a much improved offensive line. Tyron Smith is a future Hall of Famer at left tackle. John Simpson has come in from the Baltimore Ravens, and he has played well at left guard. You've got Joe Tippmann heading into his second year at center. Aaron Rodgers really likes him. He's developing well into that role. Elijah Vera Tucker is easily their best offensive lineman, their right guard. He's actually suffered back-to-back season-ending injuries against the Denver Broncos. In 2022, I believe he tore his pec or his bicep or something like that. And then last year in Denver, he tore his Achilles. So let's see. Hopefully he can avoid that seemingly bad luck that he has playing against the Denver Broncos. Elijah Vera Tucker is a very good player at right guard. Right tackle, though, is where things get a little bit intriguing matchup-wise for the Denver Broncos because Morgan Moses, their starting right tackle, is out for this game. He's going to be missing some time. So Olu Fashanu, the first-round pick from this year's draft, is going to now step in and make his first NFL start at right tackle. Last week, we saw Nick Bonito really feast on the Buccaneers' backup left tackle, Justin Skule. He beat him several times on speed moves and spin moves. Jonathan Cooper, he's been an absolute menace out there. I think Jonah Ellis has played well as well. So watch the three Broncos edge rushers, and even Dondre Tillman. Can't forget about Dondre Tillman, who had a big week. So watch all of those guys to see how the Broncos match them up against Olu Fashanu. That's probably going to be the top matchup that Vance Joseph is going to want to exploit. Who does he want to put on Fashanu to exploit his weaknesses? Does he want to put Benito on him? Does he want to put Coop on him? Does he want to put Tillman on him? Does he want to put Jonah Ellis on him? Vance Joseph really has a smorgasbord of edge rushers that he can match up against Olu Fashanu, and even on a stunt, maybe bring John Franklin Myers or Zach Allen. I know that Fashanu probably wouldn't expect that, so keep an eye on this matchup. Anytime you've got a rookie tackle out there making his first NFL start, that's a matchup that teams are just naturally going to look to exploit. If there is one weakness on the Jets' offensive line right now, at least on paper, it is right tackle. As far as the weapons go for the New York Jets, Garrett Wilson is the clear-cut number one receiver, but they kind of struggled the last couple of weeks to get him into a rhythm. I know Aaron Rodgers wants to get more work in for Garrett Wilson and really establish him as that top alpha dog, but right now, he's really done a good job of distributing the ball to other players. Allen Lazard, he's got big-time chemistry with him from their time together in Green Bay. Mike Williams had 3 catches last week. He's kind of starting to heat up. About a year out now from his torn ACL that he suffered with the Chargers last year. When healthy, Mike Williams is a good player, as we know from facing him here in the AFC West. And then you've got Malachi Corley, the third-round pick from this year. Xavier Gibson, he's a speed merchant, punt returner. He can kind of do a little bit of work on offense as well. So Xavier Gibson could be a sneaky player to watch here. And then they've got Irvin Charles on the roster as well. At tight end, they've got a couple of reliable guys in Tyler Conklin and Jeremy Ruckert. Tyler Conklin's mostly their pass-catching tight end. Jeremy Ruckert, more their blocking tight end. And then at running back, they have got a lethal tandem right now in Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. It's kind of a thunder and lightning approach. Breece Hall brings you that burst and explosiveness. Braylon Allen, he's a big, physical, imposing back. 6'1", 235 pounds. Runs with good speed for his size. He almost has a little bit of Derrick Henry to his game in that regard. So Braylon Allen is going to be a big-time nightmare for this Denver Broncos run defense. They've held up well in the first 3 games of the year. But that being said, Bucky Irving did give them some fits in that game against Tampa Bay. I'm a little worried about this running back tandem. Breece Hall's given the Broncos fits previously. Last year, he pretty much single-handedly won that game for him. And then Braylon Allen, he's also a guy that has that potential to torch the Broncos. The run defense has looked good, but that performance against Bucky Irving kind of gives me a little bit of concern. We'll see what happens against Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, and Izzy Abanikanda is nobody to sneeze at either. Moving into the defensive side of the ball, and there's no way to get around it. The New York Jets have a championship caliber defense, and now that they've got an offense that is actually giving them a lead to play with, they can play more physical, aggressive, with their hair on fire, just like the Denver Broncos defense. Last week, we saw them play with the lead. We finally got to see them at their true peak form, and now we're seeing this New York Jets defense at its true peak form, being able to play with leads, with Aaron Rodgers on the other side, knowing that they don't have to win games 13-10 anymore. They know that number 8 on the other side is going to score points for them. And it starts off up front. Quinnen Williams, their defensive tackle, he is an absolute monster up front. And I say defensive tackle very lightly. They move him all over the place on that interior defensive line, and they'll even occasionally line him up on the edge. I think Quinnen Williams is one of the top defensive linemen in the NFL, not named Chris Jones. He is an absolute monster up front, former 3rd overall pick by the Jets, and he has paid dividends for them on that defensive line for the last several years. And Quinnen Williams gets all kinds of love from the national media, rightfully so. But the rest of this defensive line, you've got former first-round picks everywhere. Will McDonald on the edge. You've got Javon Kinlaw, former first-round pick of the Niners. Tack McKinley, a former first-round pick of the Falcons. Solomon Thomas, another former first-round pick of the Niners. They've got some really good depth on this defensive line, and even some of these no-name guys are making plays for them. Jalen Holmes, former 4th-round pick out of Ohio State by the Minnesota Vikings. You got Braden McGregor, an undrafted free agent. Leonard Taylor, an undrafted free agent. All of these guys are making plays. Michael Clemens as well. I think Michael Clemens was actually the big reason why they moved on from John Franklin Myers. So this Jets defensive line, super nasty, super physical. They can get after you. They can stop the run. They can rush the passer. This is among the top defensive lines in the NFL, loaded with former first-round picks. Robert Saleh has them playing so well. So does Jeff Ulbrich, their defensive coordinator. Really impressed with this unit in particular. Their linebackers, you've got Quincy Williams, Quinnen Williams' brother, playing really well as their weak side linebacker. C.J. Mosley, the future Hall of Famer, he has been dealing with some injuries this year. He got hurt in week 2 against the Titans, didn't play against the Patriots last week, and is very questionable to play again this week. However, Jamian Sherwood has stepped in and played well in place of Mosley, so they do have at least some good depth there. Chaz Surratt as well, Sam Iguavin. They've got solid players there, even with C.J. Mosley out. And then the Jets secondary, we all know how good this unit is. Sauce Gardner, he and Pat Surtain you could pick either one of them for the best corner in the NFL. Obviously, naturally, I'm going to give the edge to Pat Surtain, but Sauce Gardner, dominant force. He can take away your number one option. He's most likely going to take away Courtland Sutton in this game. Bo Nix is going to have to rely on other options such as Josh Reynolds, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, possibly Greg Dulcich, Adam Troutman. We'll see if maybe they want to distribute the ball to guys aside from Courtland Sutton in this game, just because Sauce Gardner could take those options away. But DJ Reed on the other side as well, he's a lockdown corner in his own right. And then at nickel, you've got Michael Carter. This whole cornerback tandem here for the New York Jets is very nasty, and they can take away your entire receiving core. At safety, you've got Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, Ashton Davis. All three of those guys, very solid players. Special teams is even worth talking about here for the New York Jets. Thomas Morstead, future Hall of Fame punter, played with Sean Payton in New Orleans. Last year in the game in Denver against the Jets, Thomas Morstead pinned the Broncos back deep and then ended up forcing a safety off of it, much like the Broncos were able to do in the game against the Seattle Seahawks twice. So Thomas Morstead, big-time weapon there. Greg Zuerlein, another future Hall of Famer at kicker. Greg the Leg, one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL. And we talked about Xavier Gipson earlier. He's got, I believe, a couple of punt return touchdowns on his career. At least one that I know of, that one on the Monday night game where Aaron Rodgers got hurt against the Buffalo Bills. Xavier Gipson can break one open at any time, so he's definitely going to be a threat to keep an eye on. Ultimately, I do think that the Denver Broncos are going to go into New York and give this Jets team a very tough fight. I think the Broncos found a formula last week of what can work on the offensive side of the ball. They've already known for a couple of weeks what works on the defensive side of the ball. Defensively, I think they're going to be physical, nasty, and aggressive, and they're going to give Aaron Rodgers fits. I think they're actually going to take a look at the film from 2015, the game that Wade Phillips called against Aaron Rodgers. That was arguably the worst performance of Aaron Rodgers' entire career, that Sunday night game in Denver in 2015. I believe he only had like 75 yards passing or something like that. Vance Joseph is no doubt going to look at that film and say, okay, this is what Wade did to exploit some of Aaron's weaknesses. I'm going to do something very similar because, again, Vance Joseph has really brought back some of these Wade Phillips elements to his defense. However, offensively, Bo Nix going up against Robert Saleh's defense, I think that's going to be a very tough matchup. Saleh's going to overload the Broncos' offensive line and try to exploit weaknesses there and really try to keep Bo Nix under duress. When Bo's under duress, it's been kind of hit or miss. Sometimes he's made big plays with his legs. Sometimes he's forced the ball into coverage and it's led to turnovers. Robert Saleh is going to pretty much throw everything but the kitchen sink at Bo Nix, and I'm concerned about how well this Broncos defense or this Broncos offense is going to hold up against the Jets defense. It's really unfortunate that pretty much this entire year the Broncos are going to be facing off against defensive-minded coaches. The overwhelming majority of coaches the Broncos are going to face this year are going to be defensive-minded head coaches. So it's going to be tough for Bo Nix, especially these first 4 weeks where it was all defensive-minded head coaches. This is probably going to be your toughest schematic test outside of Seattle. Really concerned about it. I ultimately think that this Broncos offense is not going to be able to keep up, so I have the New York Jets winning this game 24-16. The defense will keep it close. The defense will keep the Broncos in it, probably force a turnover or two. I just don't see this offense really being able to keep up against Robert Saleh's defense. But I'm curious about your thoughts on this Broncos country. Do you think that Bo Nix and the offense will continue to take a step forward in this game, or do you think we'll kind of see them regress back to the mean going against Robert Saleh's defense? And on the other side of the ball, how well do you think that Vance Joseph's defense matches up against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are both free and easy ways to show your support. It helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.